All right, welcome to another deep dive. This time, we're taking a look at something a listener sent in.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's a document, actually.
Oh, yeah?
It's called Urban Design to Combat Climate Heating. It's by Guy Lakeman.
Interesting.
And it's a really, it's kind of an unconventional take on climate change.
Okay, I'm intrigued. How so?
Well, Lakeman's argument is that the way we design our cities might actually be the main reason behind rising temperatures.
Wow. Oh, okay, that's definitely not the usual take you hear.
Yeah, he doesn't really hold back.
So, where does he even begin with that?
Well, he starts by going back to basics.
Okay.
A little thermodynamics 101.
Right, the fundamentals.
You know, heat capacity, heat flow, all that stuff.
Yeah, I remember those terms vaguely from I think it was high school physics.
Yeah, well, Lakeman actually he uses this great example,
Right.
an overcrowded bathroom,
Okay.
to try to explain it in a way that that makes sense.
All right, I'm all ears.
So imagine your city, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like a giant bathtub,
Okay.
and all the buildings, the roads, all the concrete,
Yeah.
it's all increasing the heat capacity of that tub.
Right. So so it takes a lot more energy to actually cool it down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And just like a crowded bathroom with tons of people.
Heats up fast.
Yeah. An urban area with a lot of things that, you know,
Generate heat.
bars, buildings,
Yeah, yeah.
they're going to experience the same effect.
So it's not just about like global CO2 levels then.
Right. It's about, it's almost like we're designing cities to be these giant heat traps.
Okay, I'm starting to get it, but I mean, where does CO2 even fit into all of this?
Yeah, so that's where Lakeman gets really
Controversial.
yeah, he basically says that CO2 it might reflect some heat back to Earth, but it doesn't actually generate heat itself.
So it's not the source of the heat.
Right. He compares it to like a blanket on a bed.
Oh, okay. I think I see what he's getting at.
The blanket itself doesn't make you warm.
It just traps the heat that's already there.
Exactly. So the heat's coming from somewhere else.
Right, right.
And for Lakeman, that's all the stuff we're doing in our cities.
I mean, that's an interesting way to think about it. But hold on. I'm still a little skeptical. I mean, doesn't CO2 still play a big role in, global warming? Like, how does Lakeman address that?
He doesn't deny that CO2 can trap some heat.
Mm-hmm.
But he says the bigger issue is the massive amount of heat we're creating in our cities.
And that has nothing to do with CO2.
Yeah, so he's pretty critical of things like those net zero initiatives.
Huh. So he's saying those might not be getting to the root of the problem.
Yeah, he thinks they might be missing the bigger picture.
That's a pretty bold statement.
It is. He points to the urban heat island effect
Okay.
as evidence for his argument.
Right. Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that because I was just thinking about visiting a friend downtown last summer. And it was like as soon as you stepped off the train, it was like a wall of heat.
Yeah, that's exactly what Lakeman's talking about.
It was way hotter than it was even a few miles outside the city.
And he actually has data to back this up.
Really?
He cites temperature measurements and even compares the heat plumes above cities to those above volcanoes.
Oh, wow.
He says that all the concrete and asphalt, the lack of vegetation in cities, it absorbs and retains heat.
Creates these urban heat islands.
Yeah, it's like we're basically baking ourselves alive in these giant ovens.
That's one way to put it. But okay, so if CO2 isn't the main driver, and it's more about how we're designing our cities,
right?
Then what does Lakeman propose we do about it?
Well, that's where things get really interesting.
Yep.
He suggests some pretty radical solutions.
Like what?
Like reducing urban sprawl, creating what he calls green corridors to dissipate heat, and even decentralizing urban centers.
Wow. Okay, we're gonna have to unpack all of that.
Yeah, those are some big ideas.
For sure. So so what are these green corridors exactly?
We're thinking of them like strategically placed green spaces throughout a city.
Okay.
So parks, tree-lined streets, rooftop gardens.
Oh, I see. And that would help cool things down.
Yeah. They act like natural ventilation systems, letting the heat escape and fresh air circulate.
So it's not about like just getting rid of all the heat sources completely. It's more about managing it better within the city.
Exactly. And it's not just a theoretical idea either.
Yeah.
Cities like Milan are already trying out these green corridor initiatives.
Huh. So there are real world examples.
Yeah. But I got to admit, I'm I'm a little skeptical about some of this.
Yeah, I mean, like, how realistic is all this?
Like decentralizing entire urban centers.
Yeah, that seems like a massive undertaking.
It would be. But Lakeman argues that if we want truly sustainable cities, we got to be willing to, think outside the box.
To really challenge how we do things.
Yeah. So I think we should dive into these solutions in more detail.
Absolutely. Like, what exactly are these green corridors and how would they actually work?
Yeah, that's a great place to pick up next time.
All right, looking forward to it. So, picking up where we left off.
Yeah, Lakeman's solutions.
Reducing urban sprawl, green corridors, decentralizing cities.
It's a lot to unpack.
It is. But I think it's worth diving in. So let's start with sprawl.
Okay, yeah, he seems to think that sprawling cities are a big part of the problem.
Right. I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
As cities sprawl outwards, they eat up more and more land.
Yeah, which means destroying natural habitats.
Exactly. And it makes people more reliant on cars.
Oh, right, because they have to commute further.
For work,
For-
for shopping, for everything.
So more cars, more emissions.
And as Lakeman points out, more heat being released.
Yeah, it all adds up.
It does. So it's not just the physical space a city takes up,
It's like a whole pattern of how we move around, how much energy we use.
Exactly. And Lakeman argues that if we could contain urban growth,
Okay.
encourage people to live in denser areas, we could reduce the need for all those roads and highways.
Which would lower emissions, lower the heat.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense in theory, but
Right.
a lot of people, they don't like the idea of living in really dense areas.
Yeah, I get that. They worry about feeling crowded, lacking green spaces.
Yeah, they want their space, their privacy.
Right. And it's easy to picture like a concrete jungle
Oh, yeah, exactly.
where everyone's just stacked on top of each other.
But I think Lakeman's vision is a little different.
Okay, how so?
He's not talking about just cramming people into tiny apartments.
No.
He's imagining these vibrant, sustainable communities.
Where people can thrive.
And where the environment is considered too.
And I guess that's where those green corridors come in.
Yeah, exactly. They're not just a Band-Aid solution. They're a way to actually bring nature back into our cities.
So we'd be talking about like buildings with parks on the roofs.
Rooftop gardens, yeah.
Maybe even entire walls covered in plants.
Vertical forests. There are cities that are already doing this.
Really? That sounds a little futuristic to me.
It might sound like science fiction, but it's becoming more and more common.
Like where?
Well, Singapore is a great example. They've really embraced this idea of blending nature and architecture.
Huh. All right. Well, color me intrigued. But let's talk about this decentralization idea.
Okay, yeah, the idea of moving entire cities.
It seems a little crazy right now.
It would be a huge undertaking, no doubt, but Lakeman argues that it's necessary.
Okay, why?
Well, he thinks we need to move away from this model of, one dominant city center.
So instead of everyone moving to one mega city,
Yeah.
we'd have several smaller, more self-sufficient cities.
Right, and they'd be connected by efficient transportation networks.
So less strain on resources.
And more balanced development across regions.
It's like a network of mini cities instead of one sprawling metropolis.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And, there are already cities that are doing this to some extent.
Really? Like where?
Well, some European cities have invested heavily in public transportation.
Okay.
And they've created these smaller urban centers outside the main city.
So there is some precedent for this.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be fascinating to see how this would work on a larger scale.
I know. But what about the challenges? I mean, Lakeman has to acknowledge that there would be challenges.
Oh, absolutely. He talks about the need for massive changes in infrastructure.
Yeah, transportation too.
And even people's mindsets.
Like where they want to live, where they work.
Right. Those are big hurdles.
They are. But, if we could pull this off, it could totally change how we think about cities.
It would be revolutionary. I mean, imagine cities that aren't just these centers of economic activity,
Right.
but that are actually beneficial to the planet.
Yeah, like thriving ecosystems.
That's exactly Lakeman's point. He wants us to see cities as part of a larger natural system.
Instead of these separate, isolated things.
Right. But, okay, let's be real for a second.
Yeah.
This would take a ton of money and political will.
So is Lakeman, is he optimistic that this can actually happen?
Well, he doesn't He doesn't shy away from the challenges.
Okay.
But he does believe that we have the knowledge, we have the technology.
To make it happen.
Yeah. He thinks it's more about willpower than anything else.
He's right about that. It would take a massive effort from everyone.
Governments, planners, citizens, we all have a role to play.
Yeah. You can't just sit back and hope someone else fixes this.
We have to be proactive. We have to demand better solutions.
Okay. I like that.
Yeah.
But, one thing that really stood out to me was Lakeman's focus on those green corridors.
Mm-hmm. He really gets into the nitty-gritty of how they should be designed.
Yeah, it's not just about randomly planting trees.
Right. It's about creating these functional ecosystems within the city.
And he gives all these examples.
Rooftop gardens, vertical forests, linear parks.
Even green transportation corridors.
Yeah, it's really fascinating stuff.
I have to admit, the vertical forest idea,
Hmm.
that one's really stuck with me. It's just, it's such a cool concept.
It is. Imagine, like, living in a building that's covered in trees.
Bringing a little bit of the wilderness into the city.
It's like a whole new way of thinking about urban life.
And Lakeman doesn't just talk about the environmental benefits either.
Right. He points out the social and psychological benefits, too.
Yeah, like reducing stress, making people more active, building a sense of community.
Exactly. Green spaces can have a huge impact on our well-being.
It's amazing to think that something as simple as planting trees could make such a big difference.
It is. And Lakeman's work really highlights the need to break down this barrier between nature and the city.
We need to see ourselves as stewards of the environment.
Even in the middle of a bustling city.
Exactly. So, where does Lakeman leave us with all this?
Well, he ends with a call to action. He wants us to reimagine our cities,
Okay.
to embrace these innovative solutions, to work together to create a better future.
It's a big challenge.
It is, but it's also an incredibly exciting opportunity.
I agree. Imagine living in a city that's not just concrete.
But a thriving ecosystem.
That's a future worth fighting for.
It is, and that's the vision Lakeman offers us.
A vision of cities that nourish us, that connect us to nature.
Powerful stuff.
It is. And it's a reminder that we have the power to shape our cities.
We can choose to keep going down this path of unsustainable growth.
Or we can choose to do something different.
Something better for both people and the planet.
It's our choice.
And we're not powerless. We have the knowledge, the technology, the creativity.
We just need to use them.
That's a good point to end on. But before we wrap up, there's one more aspect of Lakeman's argument I want to touch on.
Okay, what's that?
He spends quite a bit of time discussing the financial incentives behind current climate policies.
Oh, right. He even hints that there might be some ulterior motives.
Yeah, that's definitely something we need to explore further.
All right. Well, that's what we'll pick up next time. So we're back and...
back to Lakeman.
Yeah, we're back to Lakeman. And this time we're getting into,
the more controversial stuff.
Yeah, like his whole take on the financial side of things.
The money behind climate change policies.
Right, all those incentives.
He really doesn't hold back, does he?
Not at all. So, last time we mentioned that he kind of hints at
ulterior motives.
Yeah, like maybe these initiatives aren't all about,
saving the planet.
Yeah, saving the planet. He seems particularly suspicious of
those net zero initiatives.
Right. So what exactly is he worried about?
Well, he questions, are these initiatives really driven by a genuine desire to fight climate change?
Or is there something else going on?
Or is it more about, creating new markets, generating profits
for certain industries?
Exactly. Like he points out that a lot of the companies pushing for net zero, they're also the ones investing heavily in the technologies needed to achieve it.
So it's like a conflict of interest.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, they stand to benefit financially.
The very policies they're advocating for.
Right. And it's a bit concerning, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And he even goes as far as to suggest that this whole focus on CO2 reduction, it might be a distraction
from the real issue,
which is
how we design our cities.
Right, how we build them, all of that.
Yeah, so he's basically saying we're focusing on this one thing and maybe missing the bigger picture.
Okay, I get that.
Yeah.
But is he saying CO2 doesn't matter at all?
No, not necessarily. He acknowledges that it plays a role, but it's not the main driver of rising temperatures.
Okay.
And he seems to think that focusing on CO2...
it lets us off the hook for the harder stuff.
Yeah, like actually changing how we build our cities.
It's easier to blame a global problem like CO2.
Than it is to deal with our own mess.
Our own heat islands.
Exactly. And he also argues that this focus on CO2, it allows us to keep doing what we're doing.
Just keep building sprawling cities.
As long as we can offset our emissions somehow.
Like with carbon credits.
Right. It's like a get out of jail free card.
Yeah, I see his point. But are these concerns about financial incentives? Are they like legit?
I mean, are there people out there who are genuinely trying to,
to make a difference,
to fight climate change for the right reasons?
Okay.
Of course, and Lakeman acknowledges that too.
Okay.
He's not saying everyone is in it for the wrong reasons, but he's urging us to be more critical,
to question things,
to make sure our efforts are actually effective.
So it's a call for more transparency, more accountability.
Exactly. We need to make sure we're not just throwing money at problems.
Right, without really understanding them.
Exactly. We need to step back, analyze things,
and make sure our actions actually align with our goals.
Well said. We can't afford to be naive about this.
Yeah, this is serious stuff.
We need to be informed, engaged.
Question everything.
Absolutely. And that's what Lakeman is pushing us to do.
To think for ourselves?
To demand better solutions.
Wow. He's really given us a lot to think about.
He has. This deep dive has been, eye-opening.
Yeah, I'm still trying to process it all.
But whether you agree with everything he says, there's no denying that he offers a really unique perspective.
He's made me look at my own city differently.
I think that's the biggest takeaway.
We need to be more aware of how our actions impact the environment.
Even small choices, like how we get to work,
can have these ripple effects.
It's all connected.
So Lakeman's sparked something in you.
Keep exploring. Keep asking questions.
Do your own research.
And think about how you can contribute to a better future.
It's on all of us to shape the cities we want to live in.
Well said.
That's it for this deep dive. We hope you found it as thought-provoking as we did.
Thanks for joining us.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning.
And keep diving deep.